All right, welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Nadeau, and I will be telling you about the Environmental Farm Plan program today. If you have any questions at all along the way, please feel free to ask. You can just unmute yourself and ask at any point, or you can also type your question into the chat function of the Zoom. I have Devin Lloyd here with me today, and she will be keeping an eye on the chat box, or you can ask questions at the end. So I'm going to get started right away here. So today we will be talking about the EFP program in Alberta, what it is, why you would want to complete an EFP, who your technician is, and what they do, what's involved in completing an EFP, some tips on completing the workbook, and how to register. So the EFP program has been running in Alberta for 17 years and was started in 2003 by the Environmental Farm Plan Company. And then in 2009, it was returned to the provincial government. And then in 2013, the organization ERICA, which is the Agricultural Research and Extension Council of Alberta, took over the program, and that's where it resides currently. So that's the organization that Devin and I work for. And we launched our online version in 2015 and have been continuously improving it since. So the EFP program, we are responsible for the delivery of EFP across Alberta, and we are guided by a stakeholder advisory committee. And the Stakeholder Advisory Committee is comprised of interested stakeholder groups in the crop, livestock, and food industries. And we're working with producers and industry groups to support EFP. And EFP is Canada-wide. So each province and a couple of the territories each have their EFP program. And we work collaboratively with the different organizations across the province to ensure a certain degree of harmonization in the program. And EFP is completely private. We are committed to protecting and respecting the privacy of your data, so you can feel confident in filling out our workbook and having it stored online. So why would you want to complete an EFP? First and foremost, it's an education and awareness tool to help you reduce environmental risks on your operation. So there's environmental benefits to doing this, as well as some safety benefits as well. And it can also be used as a future planning tool. So as you learn and understand some of those environmental risks on your farm, it is also great with that future planning, so you know where those environmental risks are and can keep that in mind when upgrading or replacing parts of your operation. It can help you increase your efficiency on your farm as well, which can lead to an increase in profit. And it's a requirement, prerequisite for some government funding programs, such as the Canadian Agricultural Partnership. So their Environmental Stewardship and Climate Change program requires an EFP. So I'm going to show that to you quickly here. As you can see here, I'm on the Canadian Agricultural Partnership Alberta website, and if you go to programs, and of course it's going to be a little slow for me this morning, and then scroll down to the Environmental Stewardship and Climate Change Producer Program. And you can go through the funding list to see all the different categories that it does provide cost share funding for, such as manure and livestock facilities and some waste management. And you can see here that an EFP is a prerequisite. Go back to where I was. So it's also, the more producers that complete an EFP make Alberta agri-grown products look good as a whole. So that can increase market access for Alberta agri-grown products. And having an EFP can also help meet global standards for sustainable sourcing, since more and more industries and buyers are trying to prove that they're sourcing their raw materials from an environmental steward. And it also helps leave the farm in good shape for the next generation. And it could be used as a tool for succession planning, as it's a great way to get multiple generations involved in management and planning on the farm. So who is your EFP tech? So there's trained EFP technicians across the province, and they're there to help you with your EFP. So they're there to answer questions. They also review and provide feedback on your action plan. They recommend different BMPs for your operation. So BMPs are beneficial management practices, and they go beyond legislation, and they can really set your farm apart and encourage environmental stewardship. So it's not the technician's job necessarily to be an expert in all the different chapters of the EFP, but they are great for providing additional resources and pointing you to the experts and different organizations that can help you achieve your action plan. Some technicians are available to set up an appointment to complete your EFP one-on-one. Some offer in-person or virtual workshops, or they may provide guidance and answer your questions over the phone. It depends what you and your technician are comfortable with. You can also receive support from EFP staff. Just reach out to us by going to our website, albertaefp.com, and you can check out our events calendar to look at what workshops we have coming up, or you can book one-on-ones with us as well. So what is the Environmental Farm Plan? It is a free and voluntary whole farm self-assessment tool. It consists of identifying environmental risks and then creating action plans to mitigate those risks. And then a technician will review the EFP, and once approved, your EFP is valid for 10 years. And then at that point, you're up for renewal. Environmental risks in your EFP are based off your site and soil characteristics, topography, water sources and water bodies, management of practices, and potential sources of contamination. Some examples of this would be mixing or storage of pesticides, manure storage, fuel storage, and many others that are addressed in your EFP workbook. Okay, so here's a quick look at the EFP workbook. Remember, this is a whole farm assessment, so you do need, if a chapter applies to your operation, you do need to complete it. But, and some of these chapters are mandatory, such as chapters 1 and 2 are, and some of them, everybody has farm waste, so everybody should complete that chapter, and energy efficiency would apply to every operation. But if you don't have irrigation, for example, you don't have to complete that chapter. Or if you don't have livestock, then you would just simply uncheck all of those chapters as well that apply to livestock. So the EFP program looks at environmental risks, and its main purpose is education and awareness around those risks. It looks at surface water contamination, groundwater contamination, erosion of soil by water, and erosion of soil by wind. So all of these different environmental risks are affected by both your natural characteristics, so that could be soil type or texture, organic matter, the topography, and it could also be affected by wind and water. And then it's also affected by your management practices. So different management practices could include tilling, where you locate potential sources of contamination, the use of cover crops, that sort of thing. An example of how natural characteristics and management practices can cause environmental risk would be cropping through or damaging the vegetation along a small stream or creek. And in the spring, since there is no vegetative cover left, the soil is eroded away and into a nearby water body or water source. It is important to note that the risk will be different on every farm depending on scale and natural characteristics. Environmental risk does not indicate environmental damage. It indicates the potential for environmental damage to occur. Here's an example of an environmental risk associated with fuel storage leaks. You can see that the fuel tank has a leak that has gone unnoticed. The next day, there's a heavy rainfall and the runoff carries the leaked fuel with it down the slope. And it goes towards the well. The contaminated water can then travel down the well casing to the aquifer. The fuel also moves through the gravel pad below and infiltrates the soil. It then has the potential to reach the aquifer. Not only is this an environmental risk, but also a health risk, as the aquifer provides drinking water for the farm family. This is a common example of environmental risk on farms. The EFP helps you identify the key factors that can increase or decrease the risk, such as the proximity of the well to the fuel tank, the slope around the well, and the presence of secondary containment. So through completing the different chapters in the EFP workbook, you examine whether your management practices align with the natural characteristics on your farm. Once you have identified potential environmental risks on your farm, you will develop an action plan to address those risks by taking actions, compensating factors, using BMPs, which are beneficial management practices, or coming up with a monitoring plan. Please remember that sometimes it's not feasible to make a big change right away. For example, if your water well and septic tank are in close proximity, it is a potential for environmental risk. But if both are in good working condition and you're monitoring and maintaining them both well, it may not be feasible to move your well or septic tank until it's needed to be replaced. A good short-term action would be to continue regular testing and maintenance on your water well and septic tank. And a long-term action plan would be that when the time comes to replace your well or septic tank, that they will be moved further away from each other. So some tips on completing your EFP workbook. Try to stick with it. We find that producers who keep at it and try to get it done as quickly as possible and reasonably as possible are more likely to complete it and not put it on the back burner. If you're renewing from a binder, so the original EFP was a big giant binder, paper version, then you can use that as a reference. You can also have your well reports and soil test results on hand. So all well reports, well, most well reports are publicly available on this database here. Only complete the chapters that apply to your operation. So that can save you some time in the long run. And remember to reach out to your technician. They are there to help and can save you a lot of time just by having a few-minute conversation to determine how to lay out everything. Since chapters 1 and 2 are setting up the rest of the workbook, they're the foundational chapters. So getting a little assistance with those chapters make the rest of the process go smoother for you. Remember to save often. We'd hate for you to do some work and then to lose it. And be sure to use the resources available within each chapter. So you can find resources such as BMPs, legislation, and funding in each chapter by clicking on the resources list in the left-hand column. And then you have a number of different resources available here. And you also have, if you click on this little paper icon on any of the chapters, you have a bunch of resources that you can sort through by topic. So now I am going to show a video here quickly. Oops. Sorry, I just have to make sure the sound's working for you here.
The Environmental Farm Plan is it's a tool for assessing the environmental risks on your farm. Everybody has got a video camera on their cell phone, and all it takes is seeing you do something once, and boom, you know, it's on the internet.
I can see the day where I need to be able to prove and justify what I'm doing to the public, so it's sort of the right to farm social license issue. Your responsibility doesn't change whether you have a farm plan or not. It's just that the farm plan shows that you've done your due diligence, right? That you've made yourself aware and you have a plan to deal with these things. Ignorance of the issues is not justification for not tackling them.
What I see coming down the pipeline being the fact that we now have retailers and consumer groups at the table talking to us. No longer is our word going to be sufficient in describing and telling our story of what it is that we do every day. With the lack of this tool, we will start to see questions of our industry that we won't like, we frankly won't like.
Tackle the easy stuff, tackle the cheap stuff. There's lots of things we've done here. We've got, for our used oil, we have a secondary containment bin. It cost us $200 at a plastic place. We keep all our used oil pails inside a secondary containment bin.
A common concern with environmental farm plans is that what happens with my information? Is my information safe? Our technicians sign an agreement saying that it's confidential. We can't put that information out there.
The Environmental Farm Plan has been designed from the ground up, from the grassroots up, from a producer's perspective. This isn't a program that you're going to pass or fail. It's a learning tool.
There's a common misconception, and that is the belief that if I've identified all of these issues on my farm as a result of going through the farm plan, that now I am obligated to go out and fix all of these problems in the span of a year or two. And that's simply not the case.
I want to have my ducks in a row and everything in place. I'd rather be the example than be told how to do it. So that just gives me documentation and proof of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Now you're prepared, you've done some of the groundwork to get yourself involved, and you've done it now before it's an emergency, then you're ready.
All right. So now I'm going to show you how to register. So if you're interested in signing up to complete an EFP, you go to our website, albertaefp.com, and you click on the right menu bar, go to EFP program, and click on Start. And then click on Register to start an EFP. So you're just going to fill out this form, and then you'll receive an automatic email with a link in it, and you just click on that link to activate your account. And once your account is activated, you'll be paired with a technician in your region, and you're ready to get started on your workbook right away. Or if you want, you can talk to either EFP staff, or you can reach out to your technician for some help. I'll also show you quickly if you go to the menu here as well, and under EFP program is also where our event calendar is. So that's where you can find some workshops if you would rather attend a workshop. Most of them are being held virtually right now, but there are still some being offered in person, practicing physical distancing and mask wearing and sanitation and all the Alberta health protocols. So I'm just going to go back to the presentation here. All right, so do we have any questions? Devin, any questions in the chat?
Yes, there was a question, but I have already answered it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm not hearing any other questions. If you have questions later, you can always reach out to one of us. Again, my name is Lisa Nadeau, and Devin was also here on the call. And please feel free to contact us anytime. Looking forward to working with you as you work on your EFP.